dangerous engine with fluid dynamite. The engines are huge. The fuel is potent nitromethane. Precision handling is needed to succeed in a sport where the margin between victory and defeat is often measured in milliseconds.
This is Garth Hogan's top fuel dragster, a state-of-the-art American-built motor car capable of extraordinarily high speeds. What does a car like this need to travel at these high speeds? Well, it needs enormous back tyres to transmit more than 3,000 brake horsepower, which is produced here in this aluminium powerhouse with an enormous supercharger, a fuel injector, 2 magnetos, 2 fuel pumps. In fact, it's got 2 of almost everything that most engines only have 1 of. But it does make a great deal of horsepower and noise. A very complicated fuel system which draws nitromethane fuel, 70 litres of it in 5 seconds, through an 1.5-inch drain pipe coming out of the fuel tank. This is where the busiest man in New Zealand drag racing sits, Garth Hogan, a very Spartan little office with a very little steering wheel and very few instruments. Coming forward here, this is not a stereo, it looks a bit like it. This is the new computer system which is used to record the engine and transmission functions in this car so that corrections can be made. Here, an 80-litre fuel tank to hold 80 litres of very, very powerful nitromethane fuel. And right at the front of the car, the little 300-mile-an-hour speed-rated skinny little tyres. They don't need to be little, the weight's not great, and it's very important to save weight in a dragster.
High-tech computers and 80 litres of fuel. Sounds like big bucks. So where does the money come from?
Well, sponsorship where possible, but most guys tend to fund it out of their salaries or their wages, or a group of them get together collectively and buy a car or run a car.
Garth Hogan, the man the crowds come to see. He's currently New Zealand's fastest man over the quarter mile, reaching speeds of 242 miles per hour. With the run over in just 5.9 seconds, it's hard to believe a speed of 241 miles per hour could be reached. But that's just another day at the office for New Zealand's record holder, Garth Hogan. The V8 configuration with top-mounted injector and supercharger hasn't changed in years. But nowadays, a specialized mini-industry supplies the parts. There's a host of aluminium blocks and heads, chrome and magnesium blowers. The list is endless, but they all have to be light and durable to sustain a Grand Prix-worth punishment on every run. After each race, the car is towed back to the pits for stripping at a much more sedate pace. First on the checklist is data from the high-tech onboard computer. Its job? To diagnose any ailments in the motor's performance.
Generally on the course of a run it will do damage to something, so we just pull the 8 conrods and pistons out and put them in the trailer, put another set in, and take those ones home and service them.
The fuel these monsters drink is nitromethane. It has a slow, even burn, producing that characteristic meter-tall header flame, best seen during night racing. It's all over in just 5 seconds. So what's the big attraction?
I've seen those cars go so fast down the track. There's nothing better, I reckon.
All the lusty guys that are here. I just really like V8, so if I had enough money, I'd have one myself.
Hey, excellent, mate. What are you doing tonight? Something to do on a Saturday night, I think.
Love cars.
Okay, we just want to know what's so good about the drag racing.
Hey, you're really spiky, you know that?
Oh,
yeah.
The other big boys of the track are the funny cars. So why the name?
Well, a funny car is what you can see there. Originally they developed them in America. They were just a factory production car off the line, and they brought the wheelbases in and they actually made the factory car look funny, and it got its name from there back in the 60s. And these things have come along from that. Now the body's fully fiberglass, and the aerodynamics, as you can see. Basically they're running the same engines as the dragster cars, capable of just about the same top speeds on alcohol, just with the enclosed body and the shorter wheelbase to resemble a car.
And he's got his best top end speed ever. Alan Dunlop, 201 miles per hour.
The dangerous combination of high speed and potent fuel has sparked its fair share of spectacular smashes in international drag racing.
I think it would be extremely foolish to say that it was safe. If you go back to the fundamentals, it's a very narrow car. It's 18 inches wide. It's made out of steel tube, and you're sitting in the middle of it with your lower parts about 6 inches off the ground. You're doing 240 miles an hour, 6 feet away from a steel guardrail. It's very hard to say that you're safe, but the equipment in the cars and the regulations pertaining to the construction of them is such that you're as safe as you're going to be doing 240 miles an hour.
One of the high points of the day is the arrival of the slick American Doug Brown in Wildfire, his exhibition jet-powered monster.
The jet car is basically a top-fuel dragster with one big difference. We've taken a Westinghouse J-34 jet engine right out of a Banshee fighter, which is an old Korean war vintage fighter plane the U.S. used, and mounted the jet engine behind the driver. And just like in the aircraft, the thrust of the engine pushes the race car down the track. It's not transmitted through the wheels like a top-fuel car or a Chev or a Holden or anything else like that. It's strictly the thrust that pushes it down the track. We're using Jet 1 jet fuel that we got from Shell Oil Company, and it's the same thing that they pump into a Boeing 747. The jet engine's producing about 6,000 pounds of thrust, which is equal to about 5,000 horsepower. We've added an afterburner to the car, so as we go down the track, we're actually trailing 30-foot balls of fire, which makes it kind of exciting. Prior to us staging on the starting line going down the track, we do what we call a line show. What we're doing is at an idle, we're dumping a lot of raw fuel into the afterburner, lighting it on fire, and we're emitting huge 50 and 60-foot balls of fire out of the back of the car. We'll move the car forward a little bit, we'll raise the RPMs of the engine up, then we do what we call a burner pop. And what I'm doing is lighting the afterburner and shutting it off very rapidly. It causes a 200 decibel concussion in the afterburner. People kind of like it a lot. And then we'll stage the car, boogie on down the track about 6 seconds, and hopefully over my record of 251 miles an hour.
With an average speed of 260 miles per hour, Doug Brown's Wildfire sucks through an amazing 30 gallons of jet fuel on every 6-second run. Drag racing has always produced exceptional times and speeds by normal contemporary standards. The difference now is that these have begun to amaze even those who achieve them. And there's